You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Well, hello. Welcome to another episode of Global Trade This Week. I am your co-host, Doug Draper, out in the Midwest, and my partner in crime in snowy New England area is Pete Mento. Pete, good day, sir. How are you?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm excited for an awesome show this week. A little bit of chit chat out of the gate. I understand you're dealing with a foot of snow out there.
Yeah, light, fluffy snow, lots and lots of it. It's a lot worse in the rest of New England, but we haven't gotten a lot of snow this year, so this one definitely got my attention, buddy. It's not like Colorado. You'll get a foot of snow, then it melts, and then you get a foot of snow and it melts.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have got some bipolar weather out there, buddy.
Yeah. Well, my daughter from college gave us a word of the weekend, which was called apricity, which is the heat and warmth of the sun against your skin. And we were joking that there is no apricity in the Midwest because it is always cloudy in the winter and everything else. So I don't know why I brought that up, but there you go. Apricity.
That's a great word. It's a great word, buddy.
Yeah.
One of the few things about living in Minnesota that I really enjoyed, and I can count them on one hand, was when winter was going on, and you'd get to like the end of March, beginning of April, and you would get those unseasonably sunny days, and everybody would just stop what they were doing and go outside.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not, we don't have that kind of winter here, and they really do appreciate it when the weather's nice. They just go outside. They just, like, you don't want to lose out on this.
Yes.
And I think as New Englanders, we've kind of been spoiled and we don't appreciate how nice our falls are and our springs are. But man, in Minnesota, they were lapping it up. They loved it.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of stopping what you're doing and running outside, that's the segue for this show. So we'll have you start off and let her rip, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, I had to pick something for us to argue about, buddy. So there is a noted financier. He is an economist, so we can start with that. And Jeremy Grantham. And Jeremy Grantham is been popularized because he makes a claim that he has been able to predict three of the major financial failures of the latter part of my life, at least. Certainly one being the dot-com bubble explosion, the financial crisis that we saw that was caused by the third that he claims he saw coming, which was the collapse of the American real estate market. And he has recently been discussing in a very underreported white paper what he is calling "Let the Wild Rumpus Begin." And that white paper and its silly name, which harkens back to where the wild things are, is a claim that he is making that we are about to see the bursting of 3.5 to 4 bubbles all at once, or a domino effect that will make all of these burst sort of one into the other. And I have always been a believer of looking at the fundamentals of anyone's predictions and trying to understand whether or not that is likely. And in this one in particular, I'm having a very difficult time disagreeing with his premise. The premise is simple, that there are 4 markets that are probably ripe for a disruption, a very negative one. The first is the US stock market. The second is the US housing market. The third is the bond market. And then the fourth is this crypto NFT stupidity that everyone is rushing towards, this electronic beanie baby of the new age, if you will. And his argument really stems from one simple fact, and that's that 80% of all US dollars that exist in circulation today have been created in the last 22 months. And that there was an upheaval of wealth that happens. All this quantitative easing created all this wealth that then went into industry, that then got into the hands of the wealthy that had to do something with it. And all that free money went into stock markets, all that free money went into property, all that free money went into bonds, and a lot of it in the hands of the nouveau riche went into really stupid idea investments like crypto. And now that the free money train is ending, And now that this quantitative easing, now that low interest rates are clearly about to end, and we're probably going to see some significant increases to interest rates, significant, as in, quarter after quarter after quarter, this party is going to end. And with it, there will be a significant decrease. Now, he makes some crazy claims. He thinks that the Dow Jones Industrials, like the top 500, it's going to go down 43%. He believes that there's going to be a run on commodities as well. That's his half, right? Where he thinks that commodities, particularly even gold, is going to have a problem with it because of the need. One of the reasons gold goes so high is its use in the creation of all these consumer goods, which are not going to be as necessary. So not even as a hedge against inflation. And then with the housing market, it is so overinflated that the ability to get engaged to purchase and buy now is going to be out of reach of people. And getting a loan is going to be next to impossible because of both the interest rates and the need of the banks to cover their backside. I'm telling you, Doug, I know, well, I wouldn't even say it. This is one of the few times I've read something recently where the gloom and doom makes a lot of sense to me, buddy.
Yeah, I don't know what the guy's out there talking about, but it's certainly pissing me off. And I'm done with this. I'll tell you what. First of all,
Okay.
the likelihood of Jeremy listening to the show is like infinitesimal, right? So he's very much.
This is very true.
He is a much smarter man than I, right? And I think a couple of the things he mentioned. Number one is I think the Earth is trying to buck us off. It's a term that my wife has used. And if you look at the craziness that's happened, fires, floods, disease, you just start checking boxes where the Earth has had enough of us and it's trying to get rid of us in some degree. And I think I jokingly say that, but if you look at the craziness of what's happening, I believe there is some truth to that, and that could be impactful. You talk about baby boomers retiring. We've been talking about that for a while, but the other flip side of that is the delay of. Sorry, my phone was going off here. Got to get rid of that. But they're just the birth rates are down, so I think there's truth to what he's saying. But I'm still rolling with the Roaring '20s for now. I don't know, the doom and gloom. I'm half glass full. Yes, I get that there's trends. You can look at historical values and things of that nature, but maybe it's naive. It probably is to some degree, but I'm not all doom and gloom. I think there will be some corrective measures. I mean, how can we go into the greatest pandemic in the history of the world and it doesn't get flipped upside down? My house has increased in value. I have more money in the bank than I had before. And I know that we're part of that demographic that has benefited to that degree. But you would think that would just destroy everything related to functioning of the world. But anyway, I'm going to get down a wormhole here, and people are going to listen to this and say Draper is completely full of shit and doesn't know what he's talking about. And maybe that's the truth, but I think there's still positive things to come. I think the Americans and the world in general is smart enough to correct the course on some of these things, and I'm more of an optimist in this situation than Jeremy.
Well, the last thing I'll say about it, Doug, because I can see this getting sideways quick with the two of us, is you make up a good point. How can the world go into a supply chain, financial, and geopolitical downspin, such as a coronavirus pandemic, and everything's just fine? Mm-hmm. Well, the way that happens is you have governments around the world that dump money into keeping everything just fine. Mm-hmm. So sooner or later, you've got to stop doing that. And every traditional indicator is that once you stop doing that, there's going to be a whiplash. So we'll see. It's got me spooked, and I'm pretty hard to spook. So that's it. Yeah. I'll let you go to our we'll watch this one, but you take us to our second great topic of the week. And I really hope that Jeremy Grantham is not a viewer of the show. And I can't imagine anybody we know knows that cat. So we're probably fine. But I just hope he doesn't come after you. Yeah. I think he's in his 80s or something. I think you probably take him in a fair fight. Yeah. So well, that was should probably be okay.
The reaction in the moment, the emotion that popped out of me, Pete. It was building as you were talking. So here's the great. My comments and things I bring to the table, Pete, are a little bit more simplistic, which is how my mind works, and that's just how I am. So I'm going back to something very, very tangible in the Freedom Convoy up in Canada. So everybody's been talking about that, and I had a personal situation, Pete, that I didn't realize how bad it was. Where I had a client that had to get some product up in Canada last week, and the rates that we quoted to get up there more than doubled in about 24 hours, right? And having to explain that to a customer is a tough gig. But if you look at what was happening, they had the convoy going kind of on the northern part of Canada, not extreme north, but the northern part going to Ottawa. And then this whole group of people just kind of swept down by all the border crossings to head over there, and really created some disruption. And so everybody's talked about what does it mean long term, and what's the the vaccine mandate to cross, and how is that going to play out. But the one thing, if you peel that back a little bit, that you start talking about what industries is going to be impacted. And shocker, but I think the automobile industry is going to be impacted to some degree. Maybe not long term like the chip shortage, but they're going to see a blip because there are still a lot of auto parts that are being made in Canada. Something I read this morning that it would be hard to find a part that is in a car or truck that does not have at least one piece of it made into Canada. So the Mexican border and the way it's crossed is a little bit more protected, because there are some rules and requirements down there related to coming into the U.S. But anyway, that's my take on the Freedom Convoy. I hope it doesn't turn into some crazy political rally and people start burning down buildings and things. But it's going to impact to a little degree, and the auto industry, unfortunately, is going to be, take the brunt of it.
Yeah, I love this for a lot of reasons, Doug. And the first is that they were very open about how they were going to do it. They said, we're not going to stop traffic. We're not going to block people from getting where they need to go. If we see a car that's in distress, we're going to send someone to go help them. The last thing we want to do is stop commerce. We're trying to help commerce to continue to move. And then they put out statistics. And I looked it up before I left. The statistics for vaccination in Canada, it's up around apparently 80%, which is incredible. But amongst truckers, it's at 90%. So amongst cross-border truckers, it's at 90%. They have a higher vaccination rate than the average Canadian cross-function population. And their argument is that they don't want to be told what to do to go across these borders. And it's a fascinating dynamic, and not to get into the whole vaccination conversation, but it has a lot to do with what are two of the most tied together economies in the world, and how something that doesn't seem to be done enough of anymore, which is a large group of people that all have the same way of making money, or all the same sort of economic environment, getting together and saying enough. And what people don't understand is just how important truckers are. And as you said, automotive, agriculture, processed foods, heavy engineering, a lot of chemical industries. Don't even get me started on energy. If these gentlemen and ladies decided that they were going to stop taking part in our international commerce between Canada and America, it will have reverberating global effects. And I think it's a shame that both sides of the ideological aisle in Ottawa chose not to address this head on, and that the Prime Minister chose to be sent to an undisclosed location out of fear of violence when there was no violence. This was an opportunity to start a dialogue about this, and instead it was just met with more silence. Can't fix things unless we talk about them. But I was happy to see, much like the fishermen in Ireland, much like the farmers in India, people just got together and said enough, and they decided to do something about it through action and speaking with one voice. So I don't know, Doug. I'm one of those people who has to get trucks into Canada. It is painful, and I understand. But I also think that every human being on earth should have the ability and the right to speak their mind freely, regardless of political ideology. And I believe there should be no tyranny in the guise of what's being done right. Look at me as I sit here with my American flag on my arm. So I guess we'll see. We'll see. I'll be very fascinated to see where this ends up, because we're going to have a similar situation with the ports if we don't watch it here in the next couple of months, where they would have the ability to shut down global commerce over what many of them believe to be a political stance. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yep. Another transition. So halftime, this is where we get a little lighthearted here. So talk to me about your communication device, Pete.
Yeah, I put this in our notes today. I think I've had enough of my smartphone and how unsmart, how dumb it's making me. I know that there is a revolution happening amongst the much hipper, younger, the kids of the world, the Keenans, if you will. Maybe we should start calling them the Keenans, where they are walking away and abandoning their smart devices and going back to the flip phone era of things. They're sending texts by speaking to their phones. They're taking all their applications off of their phones, and they're simply speaking to one another and texting to one another and not being, I guess, distracted by the other things that their phones are used for. I have been mindfully leaving my phone in my office after work hours
Mm.
and telling my daughter to call the house phone if she needs me, or I call my daughter from this number. I don't text people. I stay off of Slack and email because I want to actually be focused and available for the people that I care about while I'm home. And it's made a big difference in my life. But I really had it hit home when I was at a bar for work not too long ago, and I left my phone upstairs, and I found myself having conversations with strangers and enjoying them, Doug. I think our phone has become a great device for stopping us from actually interacting with people we don't know. And I think that's a shame.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm buying a flip phone, buddy.
Yeah, we'll see how that progresses. And the one thing that caught my attention on that one is you said landline at your house. So that I'm not even going to go down
Yeah,
that wormhole, but you still have a landline.
yeah, of course I do.
Mm.
You don't have a landline?
No, no.
Did you just age shame me? Are you saying that I'm an even bigger grandpa fussy britches than you are
Uh,
because I still have a landline?
I'm just going to move
That
on. I'm
kind of
going to
hurts
talk
my
about the
feelings.
Olympics, my friend, that you brought up, right? And I think it's good. I'm going to try to do something with the Olympics because I think they start on Friday, and you and I are both big fans of it. So we'll have to do kind of an Olympic update every week of some sort, or maybe talk about logistics and the Olympics. Maybe we'll
Oh
think of
yeah.
something cool about that. But anyway, so the question that I wanted to pose to you is what sport do you travel the fastest in the Winter Olympics, right? So, and by fastest, I mean the top speed of a human at any point during the competition. So here's your three choices, Pete. You got alpine skiing, four-man bobsled, luge, skeleton. If you want to put those in some sort of order, I'll say them again: alpine
Um,
skiing, the four-man bobsled, luge, and skeleton.
all right. So I'm going to say because of the mass four-man bobsled, and then we're going to go skiing, skeleton luge.
Mm. Yeah, it's kind of like a Wordle, right? You got a couple of those kind of in there, but not in the right order. So the thing is that everybody wants to angle with their sport. When I looked at this today, was that is it the top speed when it's snowing? Is it the average top speed of the event? There's some sort of claim to fame that they can define. Well, my sport is the fastest because of this parameter. But if you
Hmm.
shake through all that stuff, the order that has been in there is skeleton by far and away is the slowest, so that's your number 4. The next two can be flipped, which is luge and the bobsled. Sometimes luge, the reports say it's a little bit faster bobsled. The one that I thought would not be the fastest is alpine skiing, and it's been clocked at over 100 miles an hour with some guy in the Olympics a couple years back. So now there are people that have done speed skiing, right? That say I just want to be the fastest person alive, and I think there's a 158-mile-an-hour person that had done that. But as far as like in competition, alpine downhill, four-man bobsled, the luge, and the skeleton. So, oh, and the slowest,
Wow.
Pete, I'm going to let you guess on what the slowest sport is.
Curling.
Yes, you nailed it. You nailed it. So
Yeah, but it's still the most exciting in my heart, buddy. I love me some
it
curling.
is.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. We're halfway through, and this is the time that Kansas City really loved to be because I think they were up like 21-3, and then things went south real quick. So
Mm.
let's not turn in that direction. I know the second half of this is going to be rock and roll. So give me your topic 2.
Yeah, topic two has a lot to do with, I'm going to say, with how we visually look at things. The latest buzzwords in the e-commerce and supply chain and logistics world are things like omni-channel and multi-channel, where we're not just talking about this sort of micro e-commerce supply chain where large companies are trying to serve people like Pete and Doug and Keenan, viewers at home, but they're also trying to create the ability to, while also serving individual consumers, being able to serve the logistics needs of their suppliers, to create an omni-channel where they would be able to sell to retail destinations of brick and mortar, to go to the distribution warehouses of their foreign suppliers, while also being able to sell through way to the individual customers. And believe it or not, the biggest problem to doing this is not legitimate supply chains. It's not the it's not the supply chain providers that you work for now that I've spent most of my career working for. We already have all those solutions.
Mm.
We have cross-docking. We have pretty darn good cross-docking. We have some amazing solutions where we can do all kinds of, how we load the trailer after it's been cross-docked from the ocean container. And we can have different stuff in different parts of the trailer once we dropped off. We have all kinds of things you can use to see what's going when. That's not the problem. The problem is the technology between the provider, you or I working for that third party, and the e-commerce company, where there seems to be a lack of integration where these companies can actually communicate. It has a lot to do with the fact that there's no standards and the fact that everybody's trying to create their own solution rather than letting the industry where there's fewer players come up with sort of their own way of doing it and link in somehow. Everybody wants to be special, Doug, because they see being special as an intellectual property advantage and something that they can sell on the market. And I think in the long run, it's going to be up to companies like yours and companies like Cap Logistics, who sponsors this fine program, to come up with the solutions and sort of force people into one rather than the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think especially with the ocean freight that's coming over, it exists in the domestic market as well. Is there's a lot of mom and pops out there that do a lot of the heavy lifting to move things from A to B. The FedEx and the folks that own the rails, so to speak, is that they own their own network. There's a lot of people that touch it. That is some family that's running a cross dock in Lander, Wyoming, that has zero capability to support any level of technology, but they do a pretty damn good job of getting stuff in the middle of nowhere. But I think the decentralized nature of the supply chain in the United States, and there's a lot of smaller entities out there that are providing services, whether it's a connector, even some line haul, and then especially the final mile that's getting a lot of attention. I think that's the challenge. You got a lot of little guys out there that trying to embrace this killer technology, and there may be 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 different companies out there that are providing different overlays that give the visibility. So I think it's going to be a while, but you're right. The connectivity is kind of the golden child to make things work.
Yeah, buddy. So I'll be interested to watch this one. I think another problem is that all these young companies that got some hot new take on it. I have a feeling that it's the older companies that have probably already been dealing with it, but nobody wants to see these tired old companies with their solutions because they're not seen as sexy and slick.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like a bunch of old people doing the twist, and then you see a bunch of young people doing basically the same dance, but they're younger and more attractive, so people want to pay attention to them.
Yeah.
It's the same dance, man.
Yeah.
There's really nothing changed that goes along with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Doug, bring us home, buddy.
All right. Well, my last topic's a little similar to yours. I saw some stuff over the weekend. I think 2 words. Pete, you're going to love this because I got a little acronym at the end of this little rant here. Is that micro fulfillment and quick commerce are going to be buzzwords as things develop. Micro fulfillment, I think most people know what that is that are watching the show. It's like small warehouses. You can pop them up anywhere, designed for e-commerce that needs fast and effective delivery. So pop-up warehouses or micro fulfillment. And then the quick commerce is really that final mile, but those delivery companies are just uber focused on neighborhoods, so to speak, not even metro areas, right? Denver's 3 million people and it's spread out, but the quick commerce is give me a neighborhood or a region or a section of the city, and let's set up a 1950s, 1960s old school corner convenience store, put a little higher end type of products in there. So it's a finite number. It's not, the endless aisle that you can get from Amazon. And let's deliver this stuff, uber quick and get it there. And so the micro and the quick commerce, I think, is going to be more prevalent in neighborhoods. And I think there's going to be a lot of money that's going to be thrown at that because it is kind of sexy and cool. And to get some really unique cough syrup because your kid is sick and it's organically certified and whatever, and the price point is 50% higher than what you could get at Target or Walmart. People are going to pay that. And I think that the micro fulfillment and quick commerce is going to grow. The challenge I have here, Pete, is I'm not sure if I should call it Q micro, micro Q, or QMIC. Q for quick, MIC for micro, and then consumer. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of all three of them, but I got to drop something in there. So Q micro, micro Q, or QMIC. I'm kind of leaning to the third one.
Fortunately, Doug, there's already a lot of different names for what you're talking about that are being used by consultants who've never actually done any of it. So you have things like hypermile, which is one of my personal favorites,
Nice.
that truly only someone from like Boston Consulting Group or McKinsey or KPMG could have come up with. So the idea being that everything's already there except for the last mile. How do we hyperize it? How do we get that thing really moving fast? I don't know, guys. Let's spitball it around the room. Somebody get a whiteboard out here rather than let's call somebody who actually moves freight and ask them how to do it. You really hit on to one of the biggest problems in all of e-commerce, which is we are very confident as a logistics profession that we can get a large amount of stuff based on a heat map of what people probably are going to want in a part of a city or a state that allows us within an hour or 2 hours to get it to a large population of people. That's a math problem. And logisticians and logistics companies, for a bunch of guys that graduated from state schools with C averages, we're oddly good at that math problem.
Mm-hmm.
The hard part is the lack of infrastructure from when it goes to that distribution facility to the hands of Pete and Doug. And we're in an era of extreme experimentation right now, where we're trying everything from your adorable BOPUS, which has now become really important, where we're saying, how can we get people to own that expense rather than us? How can we say to, wealthy house girl, house lady, house person that's going to Whole Foods to pick up her raw milk like Keenan, apparently, you weirdo. While they're there, you can go to your Whole Food locker for Amazon and pick up all your Amazon stuff while you're there anyway. And now you don't have to wait 2 days. It's sitting there for you. It's waiting. You can get it while you're picking up your other stuff here. How do we do returns? Bring it right to Whole Foods, drop it off. We'll scan your phone. We'll stick it on there. Don't even rewrap it. We're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
So that hypermile, that end part of it, there's all this experimentation. And what's been fun for the show for me is that you've been really focused on this, and you're constantly bringing up all these ideas that people are doing that have gone just in like a year from being like half-baked ideas to sort of three-quarter baked ideas, where you can almost see how the industry is getting closer and closer to a solution, whether it's Postmates using Uber, getting people to do BOPUS in the final mile, using the U.S. Postal Service, all these things that they're trying to do, offering it in large population centers, and you're just getting there. And I'm convinced that we're much, much closer because of the pandemic. We're much, much closer because of logistics technology and the money being dumped into it than I think people realize. And a big part of it is from the sorts of things that you just discussed, which is going to be being comfortable with and accepting the fact that most of this has been decided. It's that last mile and speeding it up that people are going to have to start investing a solution into. And a big part of that's going to end up being old technology with a piece of old solutions with a piece of technology on top of it.
Yeah, you got that right. There was a company, last thing I'll say, and then I'll let you sign us off, but there was a company that talked about the final, the Q-commerce, the final mile delivery we're speaking about, that has an F-bomb in the name. They just did some A funding, and now they have a valuation at $200 million. And so who would have thought 5 years ago, here's a company that has an F-bomb in its name, it's valued at $200 million, and nobody's even heard of them. So
Wow.
it's crazy.
It is crazy, but that just shows how important this is. I think everyone has realized that last piece now, this is what's missing. It's that last little bit. We feel so much more comfortable with all the rest of it. Someone's got to figure out that last little bit. And whoever does, people are going to loosely, imitate it down the road. We just have to get to it. And the first one to do it is going to get the lion's share of the market. So Doug, yeah, whether we like it or not, this is where all the money's going to be going for the next couple of years till someone sorts it out.
Yeah.
And with that, my friend, it's time for us to thank our good friends at Cap Logistics. It's time for us to also thank the guy who keeps everything running, Keenan, and his long, luxurious, beautiful mane of locks, which he was wearing down today.
That was crazy.
Yes, it was crazy. Our granola chomping Fabio, who keeps everything going electronically for us. We do appreciate him. We appreciate Cap Logistics, and we appreciate you, all of our viewers and listeners. So many of you that have told your friends about the show and continue to keep us on the air. We're looking forward to bringing you more great content. Doug, it's always a pleasure. It's always fantastic seeing you. I can't wait for next week. Thank you, Keenan. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week for another edition of Global Trade This Week.
All right.
See you, buddy.
Take care.